So we posted a video the other day. It is of a dog named Ruby. Ruby is like a Chihuahua mixed with a mini Dachshund or something like that. Like, dude, I think she weighs 3 to 4 pounds. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, for
One
sure.
of the, I think the smallest dog I've worked with in a long time.
Really?
She came here when she was 16 weeks old. She started training, so she was like literally this big. You know
Oh
what
my
I mean?
God. Yeah.
And it's interesting, right? So like we talk about training approaches a lot. We talk about how, generally speaking, we train every dog the same as far as like the mechanics of training and stuff, right? We go through a leash pressure system with them. We add some food in. We do e-collar training, right? And they all end in pretty much the same spot where they're enforcing off-leash reliability with the e-collar, this, that. This is a dog we kind of veered from the path with, right? It was one, because of size, two, because of the expectations of the owner and what they wanted out of it. She has wonderful owners, but they didn't need much, They needed for the dog to stop having accidents in the house. And if anybody here owns a tiny dog, right, they could probably attest to just how difficult it is to potty train them sometimes, right?
Yeah.
They needed to make sure she wasn't barking out the window at everything because she developed a really bad habit of that. And the dog was petrified of walking. Just wouldn't walk, right? Literally pancaked herself on the ground and you could slide her around all day long and she just wouldn't move, right?
Wow.
So because those were the major issues, right? This is the first dog in a long time we didn't even use an e-collar, right? We tried to avoid using a prong collar even initially, but her leash walking was so bad that there was just like not another option. It's funny, when Jeff Gellman did the podcast with us, I talked about this dog where the first 3 sessions we're trying to get her to move and she just wouldn't move. And then session 3, we used a prong collar. We gave a couple of like really firm leash pops to get her to start moving. And like that, like basically solved the issue like that. Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's important. I was talking with Michelle about this the other day, right? I shadowed one of her lessons. I watched one of the lessons, and she was working with this like white shepherd mix thing, right? And I was watching her coach the client through things, and it was a final session, right? And everything looked great, right? He was super freaking happy, and I noticed like she was letting a bunch of little things slide. As far as like how he was enforcing his leash walking or how he was giving some commands and this and that. And, after the session, she's like, did you have any notes on that? And I was like, yeah. I was like, I wanted to tell you, like, I noticed that you weren't being overly nitpicky with him about things. And I was like, that was phenomenal, right? Because she was isolating the thing that he really cared about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The things that really mattered, right? He was enforcing a perfectly fine loose lead heel. And will that maybe deteriorate a little bit as he gets further along? Sure. But he could always get it back to where it was, right? His corrections he was giving when he was enforcing his come command, like they were doing like off-leash recalls and stuff with him. Okay. He was a little sloppy with how he was giving his no mark and giving his tap and stuff. But guess what? The dog clearly understood that e-collar tap meaning come to him, right? And we could spend so much time sometimes trying to turn these owners into dog trainers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it just wasn't necessary. You know what I mean? And sometimes you get in your head too much about the dog needs to be at X point that you don't focus on what does the client actually want right now, right? And you wind up creating so much more frustration and stress because you're constantly telling the client, like, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, with things that sometimes in the client's head, they're like, it literally is fine. You know what I mean? Like, to them, some of these details are just okay. They're not a problem, right? And sure, could it be tighter to our standards? But yes, but it's already good enough for their standards, right? And I talk about this with clients all the time. Like, there's dogs I'll work with and do one-on-ones with that, to my standards, like, this dog is not well behaved, right? Yeah. Like, whether that's their behavior in the house, whether that's their behavior out on the walk, whatever it may be. And I'm like, yo, like, you need to, like, you need to tighten this up. Or I used to be like really strict on them over those types of things, right? And then I started realizing that, and I think I had this realization like it was like 4 years ago or something like that. You know what I mean? I started realizing that not everybody wants to enforce this stuff or live the type of life that we live with our dogs. You know what I mean? These people have one pain point that they want to be able to look at and they want to be able to address, obviously. And past that, all those other little details, I could make them do it perfectly all day long in sessions, but they're just not going to do those things at home.
Yeah.
Right. So I appreciated that she was isolating the things that this guy really cared about. And that was the approach that I took with this dog. Right. Is we sat there and every week the dog came in. Right. Honestly, like our first half of the session typically was talking about their problematic behaviors, which kind of goes hand in hand with what we do with most of our clients in one-on-ones. Right.
Yeah.
And we sat down and we're like, all right, cool. Like these are, at the beginning of the first session, we made like our list of these are the problems that he's having. These are the things that he's looking to address. And again, most of them were those general puppy related things, not so much obedience related things, right? So each week we discussed the progress of those things. We discussed where they went wrong. We made adjustments for him to make, right? And we ultimately got past a lot of those things. And with this dog, the potty training was really difficult because he's got like a larger family. He's got kids and a wife and I think a nanny that helps with the dog and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So there was just like so much inconsistency everywhere that every week it was just like problem solving and implementing new solutions. And then it's like, all right, we got a little bit of progress and then we had to make a couple more adjustments and we got a little more progress until we finally got to a place where like everything was great. Potty training was under control then at that point, right? So then from the obedience standpoint, again, it's a 4-pound dog. You know what I mean? Like the dog does not need to be fully off leash trained and be doing all these crazy commands and stuff like that, right? Is it cool when little dogs do those things? Yes. But we wanted the dog to just be confident, well-mannered, and have some baseline communication to be able to help the dog through situations as needed. So we just did leash training, right? We did some bed stays. We did some come commands. We did a lot of food work. We worked on developing food drive and stuff like that. And it wound up working out so well, dude. Like they were so happy by the end of the program. And again, for any other dog, the end point that we got to with this, like I would be like, oh my God, we have so much more work to do. But we met the immediate goals of the client. You know, and we focused on the things that really mattered.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important thing that a lot of trainers need to continue to look at as they're working with their clients.